Welcome to No One is Safe, a podcast about books, life, and where the truth can be stranger than fiction. I'm your host, Elizabeth Scozzari. Happy Valentine's Day! We got some bunny butts because who doesn't just love a little pinchy bunny butt? Bunny butt. Also, welcome back. We are on episode 6. It is flying by. Found one of my new favorite authors. Every time I read a new book in this genre, it pales in comparison to the next one I read. And I am so excited for her. I cannot wait to talk all about it. We also have another Alex Michaelides book that I had referenced it a couple episodes ago. And Birthday Girl, which I talked about literally last week, should have actually been in this episode. I just get confused occasionally when I read things, and no matter how often I look at Goodreads, sometimes I fuck it up and I put it in I do not do what RuPaul says. I fuck it up and I put it in the wrong month. So here we are, only 2 books to discuss, and we are just going to jump right in with The Fury by Alex Michaelides. So if I gave The Maidens 3 stars, The Fury is 3.5, 4. I don't have as extensive negative things to say about it. Overall, the premise is a very small group of people go to this island in Greece. They're all connected through either marriage or emotional love or love affair, and they go to reset their brains and spend some time. I think it's celebrating the Easter holiday. I don't even know if it was spring break or Easter. It was some kind of we'll celebrate, but we'll also unwind and decompress. It's the perfect time. The main character, Lena, I believe her name was an actress, since retired, has a son. Her first husband passed away. She has a new husband named Jason. There's also her best friend, Kate, who is currently an actress in the theater and not quite reaching the same level of fame as Lena. I think it's Lena. I should really double check. So here's what we're going to do. I finally switched phones. I'm no longer on an 8. I am now in the cool kid club. It's a joke. I've never been a cool kid in my life. But I actually have I have a phone from this century. And if we go to Goodreads, we can actually accomplish a couple different things. So I never do this, but we're gonna, while it's in front of me, I was wrong. It's Lana, but a masterfully paced thriller about a reclusive ex-movie star and her famous friend whose spontaneous trip to a private Greek island is upended by a murder. From the #1 New York Times best-selling author of The Silent Patient. See, it's not just me that thought that book was fucking banging, because it is. This is a tale of murder, or maybe that's not quite true. At its heart, it's a love story, isn't it? Lana Farah is a reclusive ex-movie star, I probably should have started here, and one of the most famous women in the world. Every year she invites her closest friends to escape the English weather and spend Easter, nailed it, on her idyllic private Greek island. I tell you this because you may think you know this story. You probably read about it at the time. It caused a real stir in the tabloids, which all I hear in my head now is Jinx Monsoon doing her little Edie. Quite the scandal. It had all the necessary ingredients for a press, a celebrity, a private island cut off by the wind, and a murder. We found ourselves trapped there overnight, our old friendships concealed hatred and a desire for revenge. What followed was a game of cat and mouse, a battle of wits full of twists and turns, building to an unforgettable climax. The night ended in violence and death, as one of us was found murdered. But who am I? My name is Elliot Chase, and I'm going to tell you a story unlike any you've heard before. And also, side note, the The Maidens, didn't love that was the name of the book. Understood where we're going. Like, we seem to be going with, like, these Greek-inspired names. Like, I get it. But, like, didn't love it. The Fury, much better. Probably as far as names of his books, I would say The Fury, Silent Patient, The Maidens. In terms of reading and, like, novels, Silent Patient, The Fury, The Maidens. And for those of you who are not watching, it was Silent Patient, emphasis, The Fury, The Maidens. I guess, like, you all kind of figured it out. Anyway, so that's the premise of the story. The things that I liked about it was again, he is, like, known, I think Alex Michaelides is now known at this point for, like, the unreliable narrator. Are you of sound mind and body? What is your stake in this game? Like, all of those things that make you question. The unreliable narrator as a character in the story, I think, was handled better here than in The Maidens if we're just doing a one-on-one comparison. Overall, everything kind of fit together really well. There was, like, maybe one or two parts that not as great. But I do think if you are looking for, you know how sometimes, like, on Bookstagram, you see that if you liked this, read that. I think between The Fury by Alex Michaelides or If We Were Villains by M.L. Rios, I believe, If We Were Villains, hands down, every time, take my breath away. My stomach just, like, clenched because I fucking love that book. And so this has that kind of similar, not quite academic, but intellectual artist navigating some kind of crime, murder in this case, that, like, could or could not have been prevented, but also do we have the full story? There were no intentional red herrings. Everything was kind of neatly pieced together at the end in a way that actually made sense, and it seemed like it was intended to be that way and not kind of, like, forced into being that way. So I would recommend it if you're looking for a pretty good book that ties into Greek culture or Greek mythology or, you know, a whodunit kind of murder. I enjoyed it. I did not enjoy it as much as The Silent Patient. I know it's not fair or right to constantly go back to, like, every book that this man writes needs to be compared to The Silent Patient, but it was so fucking good. It's not my fault. So, although I will say, if I had to pick between If We Were Villains and The Silent Patient, If We Were Villains #1 immediately after would be, like, touching. Like, you've stacked them on top of each other, touching. The Silent Patient. Both of those were phenomenal books. So this one, 3.5 stars, leaning to 4. I just didn't feel compelled to push it into the 4-star category, or to give it the 4th star, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The next book on my list is a 5-star book. Body, mind, soul. Different than, like, the 2 5-star books that I literally just mentioned. This one speaks on a whole different level. It is a dark, I don't think taboo, but, like, a dark romance. It is part of the Tattered Curtain series by Greer Rivers, who, amazing. I love her. I love her attention to detail. I love the disclaimers in the beginning of her book because she addresses things in a very unique perspective. It's not like everything needs a trigger warning or a content warning now, slap a label on it. She actually articulates things that I think are really powerful and provide extra oomph to her novels, as opposed to, like, okay, it has a content warning. We are specifically talking about Phantom. I am so bummed that, like, the mystery box on her website is sold out and I have not been able to secure one, but so good. So good. So the premise of Phantom and all the other Tattered Curtain series, I guess, a Tattered Curtain novel, they're all standalones, but they are all interpretations, for lack of a better word, of Broadway productions. So this one's called Phantom. I feel like we can all kind of figure out Phantom of the Opera here. We're smart people. Good job, guys. Thumbs up, everybody. Yay. This story of Phantom is about Scarlett and her mental breakdown her bipolar manic episode breakdown after her father's death and her path to recovery and getting her shit together. Tying in the fact that she is in New Orleans at this special conservatory for musicians. She's very talented. She has a best friend who's hysterical. Maybe not hysterical, but I found him funny and enjoyable, and I liked his presence in the book. And she runs into an old family friend. She also feels like she's been getting letters from the Phantom of the conservatory, who, you know, she's heard like things about, but she thinks it's part of her bipolar. And one of the, circling back to where I started with this, is one of the things that Greer Rivers is very clear about is every symptom and every manifestation of Scarlett's bipolar disorder is something that Greer Rivers has experienced herself. So she writes from firsthand knowledge, but she's also gone and consulted with, you know, other people about different topics and stuff. And so it's really lovely. It's like a weird word to use, but it's lovely how she is able to take something that has obviously been a part of her, probably not an easy part of herself to like work and reckon with at times. I do know people who have the diagnosis of bipolar level 2. So, you know, looking at speaking specifically as someone who's seen their journey and their struggle, like it's not always easy at times. But hey, I don't have a diagnosis card at this point in time, and like I find parts of my personality hard to fucking reckon with. So, and I'm sure you guys do too, but we're all here together. So it's really lovely how she's able to incorporate this part of herself into her books in a way, or in this specific book, that like in a way that builds strength to her character while also building awareness. And it's not done in like a preachy way. It's actually done in very much like a way that as a reader you just click and relate and connect with. So that was beautiful. The overall story arch, spoiler alert, but she says it, so I feel like I can too, does have a happy ever after, and I love that. And I just, the characterization, the way that she specifically handles like the dark romance side of things. And this is what I was referring to earlier. I started my dark romance journey with Haunting and Hunting Adeline. For some reason, like the name escaped me. And they were actually, if you watch my reviews, I fucking loved them. But there were still parts that like nagged at me, and what I ended up loving most about them was like this triumphant story of, you know, saving trafficked women and children. And like I always had some kind of issues with Zayd and like his behavior, but I couldn't quite vocalize it. But also I liked the book, and yes, we all know that the writing in that is not like the most magnificent, but I don't think anyone's picking up that book to read for good writing. You know what I mean? Like they're not like, I want to read amazing literature. They're like, I want to read some smut with some dubious consent. And in that book specifically, it is not dubious. Like there's just no consent, but whatever. I did enjoy reading them. Again, I'm an immersive reader. When I start reading something, I get so into it that like it makes me overhype everything until I've had some time to like take a step back and process it. There's also a book that we're going to talk about next episode that completely changed the way I do my rating system. So no more will every book be 5 stars with the disclaimer that it's different. I've gone way off topic, but reeling myself back in, I started with Haunting and Hunting and felt one type of way about it. Then I read 56, which was a taboo romance, not necessarily dark, but had kink to it. And it made me reflect differently on Haunting and Hunting. Somewhere in between, I read Priest, which also made me reflect differently on the previous books. This is the be-all and end-all precedent book for me. If you are writing dark romance and I am reading it, this is the book that I will be setting it against. Like, this is what it's competing to. This, for me, was just the perfect demonstration of consent and kink and dark romance and forbidden love and happily ever after with plot twists and just everything you could want. It's a love story between Saul and Scarlett. It's a love story with Scarlett and herself, and just everything about it was beautiful. And on top of it, the fucking cherry on top is that it was well written. And it is not just one. She has 3 of them. Again, they're standalones. We'll talk about the other 2 in future episodes. But like, applause, hands down. I loved it. It was so good to me. Just the characterization, the way that people are portrayed, the balance between real and plausible, acceptable and scandalous, kink, and like, it's all beautiful. It's all good. There's at one point where a character says to another one, like, I want you to have my babies, whether or not you want to. And normally I'd be like, fuck this shit and throw the book away. But the way it's written and the way that I loved these characters so hard, I'm like, it's fine. Have his babies. It's great. Like, it's probably like a terrible snippet to share, but I loved them. They were all 3 of them are well written. This one was the first one I read. I fell in love with it. 5 stars. Thank you, Greer Rivers, for being a person and sharing and writing and just giving everything the insight that you do, and like sharing your writing the way you have. So, yay. There's really no transition, just sticking to basic formatting here. I would normally tell you about like these amazing things that I did. February was actually a low-key month, and like looking back at pictures from my phone to try and remember, because I'm not recording in the month of February, doing a little time hopping around over here because, you know, time's not real. I drank a lot of coffee looking back at my pictures. I went to the ice festival that we had in town where there was just giant ice sculptures everywhere outside of businesses. It was really cute, very small town, very Stars Hollow for any Gilmore Girl fans. I did do my first at-home waxing, which, let me tell you, fucking love it. Loved it. Like, just, ripping that shit off, it's phenomenal. It's like very satisfying, and it doesn't even hurt, so like highly recommend. I will say the waxing strips I used, I tried to cover a lot of territory with like one package of wax because I was on a budget at the time and it didn't quite go very well. I think had I been more specific or gotten 2 packages of wax and also had more patience to like let the strips melt between my hands more, would have come out better. But it was fun and I liked it, and it was there is one thing that I did in February, and it kind of ties in with our No One Is Safe moment. I, as many of you guys know now, have written a first novel. It's been done. It's been redone. I've done different revisions of it over the years, and I finally had it in a place where I liked it a lot and I felt confident enough to shop it around, to query it, to get a literary agent. And I wasn't getting any bites. I wasn't getting anywhere. I think at one point I had like 99 rejections, and I just like couldn't get the right bite that I wanted. And obviously, like, I have more than that now because I'm still querying it. But instead of letting that get me down, I actually happened to be on Instagram. I had just read Dark and Shallow Lies by Ginny Meyerstein, and I loved it. And I happened to be on Instagram, and I saw her pop up on my feed with this advertisement that she does in fact do query packages. She'll review your stuff. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I have not gotten anywhere on my own. Let me try something different. You know, I learned it in the Boy Scouts. What got you here won't get you there. I don't think it came from the Boy Scouts, but that's where I learned it. So I reached out. We worked together. She had amazing insight into the first 25 pages, which were the first 6 chapters I never felt as strongly about as the rest of my novel. And it was because I wrote it at 2 different times in my life and yada yada. And so working with her on my query package, I was able to tighten up my query letter. I was able to get some insight in those first pages. And what I did was I took my excitement, I channeled it, I focused, I like hyper focused and kind of neglected myself in other ways. But I ended up not just rewriting those first 6 chapters, but being able to craft a little bit more in each chapter that I had and create something that I felt even more proud and excited for. So I rewrote my query letter. I gave a freshening up, a facelift to the novel that I loved. And I was able to do it in a week because I was so excited and I was just fucking ready. And, working with her was amazing. The moral of the story here that moves into like the next part of this podcast where we do the know in a safe moment is you always have to believe in yourself. And if you have a gut instinct that something isn't as great as it should be or you could do better, listen to that, follow that. Also, trust in yourself to know when you have to ask for help or when you should ask for help, and never be embarrassed or ashamed. Like, we don't get through this life just listening to ourselves. We learn from others. We seek out guidance. We seek out spiritual connection. We seek out just like other sources of light to help fuel our own and to brighten our own. So that is my cautionary, moral, tale standing, whatever. Don't be afraid as a writer to share your stuff. I remember when I first started sharing my stuff, I was like so nervous. I didn't want anyone to read it. I couldn't fathom like letting other people read it, which wasn't going to get me anywhere. And so I've gotten past that. I've gotten confidence in myself. But the other thing is, I know when I critique people's stuff, I will rip it apart in the nicest way, but like I will be very honest, straight shooting with you. I will rip it apart, but I will also be there to talk it through with you and explain it. And everything that I do when I edit other people's stuff or when I beta read other people's stuff, critique, edit, whatever, because I do a little bit of everything on the side, it comes from a place of love because I want your stuff to be the best it can be. And I had to apply that the other way around, that like finding the right people who are going to want my stuff to be the best that it can be. And I was able to find that in Ginny, and she inspired me to like rework some stuff and really not just give it my best from a couple years ago, but give it my best now. And that's different because I've grown as a person, I've grown as a writer. So taking all of this like really positive forward momentum, one of the things that like I talk about with my best friend is writing. Like, he knows how much I love to write. He reads my stuff on my website. He's possibly one of my like biggest supporters. And by possibly, I mean, he's pretty much in like the top 3 of support here. And like one of those is my mom. So, he reads my stuff and he supports me, and I do the same for him in other areas. It's what friends do. They support each other. They uplift each other. And one of the things that Matthew and I were talking about was this contest, right? So like this contest that I have entered, I think 4 times now, and I've only ever made it to the second round. Like, I've never made it to the final round, and I've never won. And like, well, I'm going to keep trying. But we've talked about it before, and he got so excited. And I'm like, why don't you enter? Like, you cannot just be this excited for me. Like, why don't we see what this looks like on you? And he was like, no, whatever. And so at first he was hesitant, and then he did it, and he did not, sorry, Matthew, he did not place past the first round. But like, I didn't either. But his critiques were much harsher. And like, maybe it was just a different judge, or, we're in different places in writing, whatever the case may be. But his critiques came back very harsh. And so we talked it through. And like, at first it seemed like this was his first contest. And I got the impression like he was never going to do it again. And I was like, this is not the right way to do this. Like, so we talked it through and we came to a good place. And I had actually seen an advertisement for the Owl Canyon Press hackathon. And so I clicked on it, and this one, unlike the previous hackathon that I had participated in, was for 2 authors. And how it works is the Owl Canyon Press, give you the first paragraph, and then every other paragraph, so even odd, is divvied up by the 2 authors. They cannot work together, like one writes and then the other one writes, and they each write every other paragraph until the ending. Then the even, I think they call it like A and B, but the even person gets B, the odd person gets A, and that is the ending they're tasked to. But you cannot change anything except for the paragraph right before it. So it's 50 paragraphs. They give you the first one, they give you the last one if you're A, they give you the last one if you're B, and the only thing you can write is the last one right before it, like independently of your partner's piece. I talked to him about it and I was like, listen, I know that the last contest kind of sucked a little bit, but I think your story was great. Why don't we work on this one together? Would you want to? And, you know, true to best friend energy, he was like, abso-fucking-lutely, let's go. And so that is part of the reason we are such good friends. Like, this is the reason why this man is my best friend. Because when I see an adventure, I fucking go for it. He goes for it. And together, we can adventure. It's a lot of fun. Makes sense, right? So as like, I don't even remember what we came up with as a team name or whatever. Something like a play on best friends or... Anyway, so we ended up submitting together to the hackathon. We did not win, but we did write this really neat story. And the inspiration that we both came up with these characters that we came up with were based on the fact that, like, he helped me move to Pennsylvania. Because, you know, if you don't already have one, get yourself a friend who can drive a really big truck. He happens to be able to drive a box truck, so he helped move me out here. Thank you again. And so while we were driving down, the two of us, in case no one's noticed, are goofballs. And when you're driving from New Jersey to Pennsylvania, you pass the Delaware Water Gap. But it's written on the sign as Del Water Gap. And so because we're stupid together, he does accents. So he comes out with this super southern, like, Del Wall Gap, just playing off the sign. And when I was a kid, I would just talk in accents for like days on end. I picked it up, and for the whole drive from New Jersey, once you cross the border to Pennsylvania, we just came up with like these silly Southern characters. We just gave these people their whole life backstory. And so from doing that, we took those characters and took like the evil versions of them, so to speak, and wrote this, what I think is a great story. It is mostly unedited due to time constraints. We actually had this really terrible experience with Evernote where he like opened it, the whole file disappeared. Then he closed out of it to reopen it, and it wouldn't give him other versions. So even though he paid the membership, like it didn't have a version history. So like we couldn't get it back. So 2 days before the contest was going to be over, we had to rewrite the entire thing. And so it didn't have time to be polished and edited, but we did the best we could. I chose to post it on my website unedited as it is. It was a contest piece. And it was really interesting to like work together in that capacity because, you know, you don't always get to do, like, writing isn't always a group activity. And so to write this story with my best friend was really fucking cool. And I think it came out great. And shout out to him, because here's where we loop all the way back around to the positive pep talk I had before. If you tell yourself you can't do something, you're not going to be able to. But if you find excitement and positivity and hope and just believe that like you're going to do the best you can, you are going to surprise yourself. If you go even one step further and say, I can do this, you're going to do even more amazing. So I felt good about where my best was when I finished my novel the first time. And I have kept taking it to new levels and to new bests. And so that same energy of I can, and I was uplifted by my best friend, we got to turn around and work on something together that he didn't think he was going to be able to do. And he did it, and he did a great job, and we did a great job together. So you just remember that no one is one skill or one talent, and no one is just one thing. But most importantly, in my world, no one is safe. Bye. Happy Valentine's Day. Love yourself. And then get laid. Bye!
Thank you so much for listening to No One Is Safe. This podcast means so much to me. If you've enjoyed it, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and leaving a review wherever you listen to your podcast. For more content or more information on me, please follow my Instagram page at Elizabeth Scozzari Author and check out my website, elizabethscozzari.com. Thank you so much again, and go out and have a wonderful day. See you next week.